And we're live. Okay. We started last week with, we dealt with mitzvah in Shema of teaching Torah. And we shared that the Torah actually, the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral law, uses teaching Torah in 2 times in the Shema. Okay, so who would like to give a base? Who can give a synopsis? Who can give a synopsis of what was the 2 frameworks of teaching, and where are they in the given Shema? Does anybody remember that?
I can take a stab.
Go ahead.
It mentioned it twice. One was interpreted as teaching your son, and one was interpreted more generally as teaching others for advanced Jews.
Okay. True. Now, both terms, if you say the Shema, it does on a literal thing says you're teaching your son. But in order to understand where the oral law comes from, you have to see the context of the paragraph. Okay. What's and this is something we've already done a couple of times, a couple of weeks. What is the character of the first paragraph of Shema? What's the overarching theme?
That you have to love God with all your might.
Well, that's a particular obligation, expressed in the Shema. But what is the motif that Moshe, as who's giving his part of his farewell address to the people, what is the?
He acts as a teacher.
Well, he is acting as a teacher. But what is he trying to? What is the personality that he's depicting?
Oh, a fan, like somebody who devotes his life to Judaism.
Right. So the psukim, the verses there when it says, "Understand Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is uniquely one," and as we pointed out, that requires an explanation. That's not a self-evident statement. In fact, as you may have noticed, we are tonight and tomorrow in the Christian calendar is a celebration of the birth of the man God. So it's a little strange. And then so how do you reconcile God's unity with the Trinity? So you see, it's not I use it just as a point that says not a self-evident idea. So the part of the mitzvah, the first mitzvah of Shema, is that your obligation to explore that, understand that in a deep way. In fact, ultimately, to demonstrate the truthfulness of that point. So if you're exploring God's wisdom to that degree, it's a natural reaction to also have love of Hashem, appreciation of that source. And Moshe says, you shall love Hashem your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your resources. And it should be these things and these concepts upon your heart that I command you today. And you should teach them diligently to your son and speak in them when you walk on the way, when you stay in your home, when you get up, and when you lie down, when you lie down, when you get up. So as you said, Gilad, that the fan who's enthralled, whose passion is the wisdom of Hashem, will teach his son diligently, will speak about them continuously, at home or on the way. When he gets up, and he will put on his tefillin to remind him, and he would to manifest that idea, and as well as he'll put them on his doorway. Right. So that's talking about if you see on their sheet here, the pure fan of wisdom. That's the highest level. So we're going to get to today, and this was a question that Gilad had. Well, how can you take from the text, Vishnant Levanacha, Elu Tamidecha? Those are your disciples. I mean, how did the oral law get that? You know what I'm saying? We're going to explore that today. 2, also in the second paragraph of Shema, and let's just do a quick review. I'm going to zip you up to take a look at the second paragraph of Shema. Let's have somebody read it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. If you're careful to pay
And your
heed,
microphone's on.
if you're careful to pay heed to my commandments, which I'm prescribing to you today, in order to love God, your Lord, with all your heart and soul, then God has made the promise. I will grant the fall and spring rains in your land at their proper time, so that you will have ample harvest of grain, oil, and wine. I will grant forage in your fields for your animals, and you will eat and be satisfied. Be careful that your heart not be tempted to go astray and worship other gods, bowing down to them. God's anger will then be directed against you, and he will lock up the skies so that there will be not any rain. The land will not give forth its crops, and you will rapidly vanish from the good land that God is giving you. Place these concepts of mine on your heart and soul, bind them as a sign on your arm, and let them be an insignia in the center of your head. Teach your children to speak of them when you are at home, when traveling on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Also, write them on parchments affixed to the doorposts of your house and gates. If you do this, you and your children will long endure on the land that God swore to your ancestors, promising that he would give them to them as long as the heavens are above the earth.
Excellent. Well read. So here, a couple of review questions. So what's the motivation of keeping the mitzvot according to verse 13, which is the first verse? What's motivating the person to keep the mitzvot?
Reward, physical, material reward.
No, from the first verse.
Oh. What's the question?
What's the motivation to keep the mitzvot in the first verse? The first verse of this.
I don't know.
Well, it says to or to love you, Lord your God. So there's an aspect of love.
By giving, I guess.
What?
Are you suggesting that then by giving, that's how you like ahava and have like by giving you then feel love and feel loved?
Well, first of all, that I think that's a true point. But here he says, if you're careful to pay heed to my commandments, which I'm writing today, in order to love your God with all your whole soul, then Hashem will make this promise. But it seems that at least love, or at least as an aspiration, is motivating the keeping of mitzvot. Then what Gilad said is that then on verse 14, 15, what's the motivation?
Reward, punishment?
Yeah. Abundant financial success and or avoiding destruction. Right? So that's so that gets to question number 3. Is there a contradiction between the motivation for mitzvah identified in chapter 11, verse 13, versus the motivation identified in verses 14, 15, 16, 17? And how would you resolve it?
I mean, you can say that there's a difference, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a contradiction. So, I mean, there are two different points that you just highlighted in terms of motivations, reward and punishment, and also being able to be loved. But I don't know that one negates the other.
Not to be loved, but to love Hashem. In other words, are those contradictions?
Well, I go back to the idea, when you invest in something, you're more likely to care for it. And you can also have this aspect of fear, like awe of Hashem, the reward and punishment side of things.
Oh, so that seems to be a contradiction. That one is talking about a fear of Hashem, and one's talking about aspiring for love of Hashem. Those are not the same thing.
We always talk about these two aspects of our relationship with Hashem, though, like love and awe. Like we see them hand in hand.
Correct, but they come hand in hand. But they're also, where does a person begin with? What step do they begin with?
Here it sounds like love.
Well, love is present, but it's not the person has love, but he also has love of other things as well. It's a mixed motivation. You know what I'm saying? In other words, the person, let's take ourselves. A person can appreciate an excellent class where they have a true insight. Okay, so they liked the class; it was good. They're happy they went. Good, but they have but then an hour later, they're watching a movie. You know what I'm saying? So, if they love Torah so much, how can they watch a movie? The bottom line is they have love of Torah and they have love of movies. So it's a mixed motivation. He's to use, what Gilad said. The first paragraph, Shema, talks about the pure fan, an absolutely a person whose love is completely, totally absorbed. The person who's a partial fan has love of Hashem, but he has other loves too. So there, as part of the motivating consideration for the person, is reward and punishment. You know what I'm saying? It's part of a person's growth and development. But just by using the analogy of the football fan, you're not going to give the guy, if you watch this Giants game or Pittsburgh Steelers game, which you're a lifelong fan of, I'm going to give you $100. Wouldn't that be silly to the guy? He might even find that offensive because you're really saying that he doesn't really love the game. He loves money more than the game. That's why you have to motivate him with something else. You know what I'm saying? So it's really it's a secondary second tier thing, but that's fine. So that gets into question number 4. Is the parent who teaches his child in Torah in verse 19 a pure fan of wisdom or a partial fan of wisdom? What do you guys say?
Which one's 11:19? Sorry.
That's in our 11:19 is this. Teach your children to speak of them when you're at home, when you travel on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up.
It's pretty pure.
Well, but in the paragraph, remember that this is talking about the same guy who's talking about who just got, and God's anger will be directed against you and lock up the skies. So place this concept of mind on your heart and teach your children to speak of them. So in the context, is he a pure lover, a pure fan, or not a pure fan?
No, he sees the big picture. So that statement is pure, but in the context of the whole paragraph, it goes back to the mixed.
Right. So he's so in the first paragraph, it doesn't talk about reward and punishment, just talks about loving Hashem pure, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. That's a pure fan of Hashem's wisdom. Here he has other considerations. So going back to while in the first Shema, we're going to go to question 5. This is a quick review here. In chapter 6, which is the first paragraph of Shema, the Torah identifies teaching as transmission of concepts and study and topics of continuous conversation, while in chapter 11:19, it is a teaching of concepts as topics of conversation and words alone. How do you explain the difference? There's the medical student's terms versus the doctor's concepts of systems of the body. In other words, I'll make it very simple. In the first paragraph, it says, "Vishinamtem levanecha b'dibarta bam," and you should teach them sharply to your children and speak in them. And this other in the second paragraph, Shema, and you should teach them to your children to speak of them. So, which one is more sophisticated? Paragraph 1 or paragraph 2? The first paragraph of Shema or the second paragraph of Shema? What do you guys say?
The second one
Second paragraph of what?
is more sophisticated.
Well, it says you should teach them to your sons. You should teach your sons to speak in them. The first
Right. I think that's
just said Vishinamtem levanecha. You should speak. You should teach them sharply to your sons, v'dibarta bam, and speak in them. So, what's the difference, first of all?
the difference is in the second one, you're teaching them so that they can speak of them in conversation with their peers. In the first one, you're teaching the child about the specific technicalities so that you can speak about them with your son.
Okay, 1 second.
The second one seems to be where you're teaching them to be an independent learner, where they can go off and do it themselves. The first one is where you're just teaching it to your children so that they know.
Well, it does say you should teach them sharply and you should speak in them when you when you go on the way, and when you go on, and when you're at home, and when you get up, and when you lie down, when you get up.
But
So,
that's for you. Oh, that's for you yourself, right? I mean, the second one is where you're teaching it so that they can do it themselves, I think.
okay, so I think that you're the way that you're explaining. I think what you're saying makes sense. But I guess let me.
Okay.
So the one I just got to give a little grammar fact. The shinamtam, the word the verb shinamtam comes from the word shinun. It does mean to teach, but also has a connotation of sharpness, and like a sharpness of the edge of the spear.
Okay.
Chetz shinun, a sharp spear. So that would suggest in the first paragraph that the dad, is teaching the child the material in a sharp, comprehensive manner. You're giving him a comprehensive education there.
I guess in my mind, it seemed to me more of there's an element of rebuke there.
No rebuke there.
Okay.
Shinan Levanecha is teaching him sharply to your child, which means giving a clear presentation.
I see. Understood.
Like a textbook presentation. You're starting with the basics, and then you're talking further. Or here, you're teaching your kid to speak in them. In other words, just to get some basic, you teach him some sukkim, you teach some basic concepts. You're having a dialogue with the guy. You know what I mean? It's a lower level, because we're talking about the second paragraph, talking about the partial fan of Hashem's wisdom. He's not really capable of that. Okay? The first paragraph talks about the higher level person, and therefore it gets into this is what and we had this question last week by Gilad, and we're going to just go a little bit deeper here. So let's take a look at yeah.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
When you start to describe these two different types of individuals and whether or not they're sophisticated in the explanation, it makes me think a little bit of how we describe in Passover the 4 types of sons. I'm just wondering, like, what's special about there being 2 different types? We could have talked about, more than 2. Why we boil it down to just 2?
Well, actually, we're going to end up it being 3.
Okay.
We're not right. But that is a excellent association, because in both cases, in the 4 sons, the Seder is a classroom, the father is a teacher, or the Seder leader is a teacher, and they have to know who the audience is, right? Whether the wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, or the one who does not know how to speak. But here we're not talking about the son. The son is the same. Here we're talking about the parent.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
You know what I'm saying? The difference is different levels of the parents who have a different level of knowledge. So let's read. This is from the Rambam and the Mishnah Torah. Let's read. Halacha 1.
I'll read.
Yeah.
Halacha 1. Nevertheless, a father is obligated to teach his son Torah while he is a minor, as Deuteronomy 11:19 states, and you shall teach them to your sons to speak about them.
Okay. So that's the basic obligation. That's from the second paragraph of Shema. And just by analogy, just like, and I think it's a good analogy, good way to explain it to people, is that just like in America, the basic American dad, the basic obligation is to take his son out to teach him how to throw, catch, and hit a baseball. If you do not do that as an American father, you're a disgrace. Right? Right? I mean, based upon the teachings of American popular culture, would you not agree with that?
What would you teach a girl?
Well, nowadays, since we're egalitarian, the same.
Okay. Just checking.
Right. But unless the girl doesn't want to do that. Like my daughter likes to do gymnastics, and I can't teach her anything because she can teach me. I don't know how she does what she does. So, that's the point. The point is At the basic level. Well, now let's get to the next level. Halacha 2.
Halacha 2. Just as a person is obligated to teach his son, so too he is obligated to teach his grandson. As Ibid 4:9 commands, and you shall teach them to your sons and your grandsons. Furthermore, this charge is not confined to one's children and grandchildren alone. Rather, it's a mitzvah for each and every wise man to teach all students, even though they are not his children. As Ibn 6:7 states, and you shall teach them to your sons. The oral tradition explains your sons. These are your students, for students are also called sons. As Kings chapter 2, verse 3 states, and the sons of the prophets went forth.
Okay.
I'm not sure how that relates, but okay.
All right, we're going to break it down. You're going to, in the next 15 minutes, I'll make all that clear.
No, I'm just saying I don't understand how the quote from Kings relates to these other quotes, but okay.
No, we'll explain that.
Okay.
So let's first of all. So I understand the dad. Dad's got to teach his son. Okay, and then when he gets to a certain level, he'll pass him on to a trained teacher. Okay, I get that, because Torah really is not just learning Torah, but it's part of entering in or participating in a discipline. Just like a person learns math, they don't just learn math in isolation. They correct the curriculum. They do elementary math, and they do high school math, and they do college math. They'll go to graduate school, and they might learn to become a graduate student, a professor, a teacher's aide, an adjunct professor, etc. There's a whole person who does research. There's a whole hierarchy of step-by-step level. So the basic starting off is the father. Now, interestingly, so I have a basic question. What's up with the grandfather? If I got the father and I got the wise man who knows the Torah, what do I need the grandfather for? Either he is a wise man, so let him, then he's obligated. But why did the Torah, and we look at that that section in 1 second, why did the Torah obligate the grandfather to teach? What's his role in the whole transmission of Torah?
Doesn't that transmission get reinforced by having multiple generations taught by the same person and by having multiple generations hear the same message?
Yes, but 100%. But what do you think is a grandfather's unique contribution more than the dad?
Wisdom, experience, lived it longer, perhaps.
All true.
Well, in one sense, that the process of learning doesn't end. I mean, that kind of reinforces what Shira, I think, was saying. I mean, the idea of learning never ends. It keeps going, and the child sees that the father's involved in it in his life. His father's father is also involved in it in his life. It doesn't stop. It's a constant process. You don't get to a point and just sort of plateau in your learning and wisdom seeking.
That's 100% mental. That's 100% correct. But the question we have to ask is, well, why is it? It seems to be something special, unique, of having the grandfather teaching the grandchildren, the grandson. So he quotes a pasuk, and I'm going to take a look at that. We're going to go to the verse here.
I have the verse. I'm here already. Should I say? Okay.
Okay. How do I share this one?
Sure. I'll share.
Okay. Do I see this?
No.
Isn't it more powerful also if a grandfather and a father can teach the same message to the son? It shows that both generations have learned it the same way. That it's not just like you could be sitting in a synagogue and everyone's saying the same prayers from around the world at the same time.
Yes.
There's this sense that it's uniform and consistent, and there's continuity.
100%. That's definitely an element here. Let's actually look what they quote the verse here. He says like this. Let's take a look at this. Who can
Is this the Mishneh Torah you're showing us, or the Torah?
The actual Torah, Deuteronomy 4. Is it coming? Do you see it on the screen?
We do.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's pick it up over here, verse 9. Who'd like to read?
I'll read.
Mendel.
Good. Good.
No, should I read it in English or in Hebrew?
Read the English.
Okay. Only take heed to thyself, and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eye saw, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. But make them known unto thy children and thy children's children.
All right, go to 10.
The day that thou stoodest before the Lord thy God in
You're reading a
Horeb.
different translation. I know you're on a different translation.
Oh, I'm doing something else. When the Lord said unto me, assemble me the people, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live upon the earth, and that they may teach their children.
Okay, good. So we got that's the King version, but the same thing. So what Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people, what is he telling them they have to continue to preserve? What memory, what event is it vital to preserve?
Mount Sinai.
Correct. And the goal being that
They fear him.
to fear him. Correct. So there are. Shira brought up a number of advantages and what the grandfather brings to the table. So first of all, is it automatic that the father will be successful with learning with his son? Is the father-son relationship an easy one? No. There's a lot of challenges there. Because,
Frictions.
right. Well, there are frictions. Because the challenge is, what's the challenge? Because the parent mudding the waters is that the parent has certain aspirations of legacy, of greatness, of ego gratification. So therefore, the child, he's looking at the child as a vehicle of that. So if the child is not performing, it makes him very upset, and it creates and spoils or damages or prevents the educational experience from properly happening. You know what I'm saying? So whatever the parent can deliver, that's a simple. How about the grandfather? How would you characterize the relationship between grandfather and grandson?
Easier going.
Oh, it's not only it's easier, it's great.
Much more kindly.
Yeah, there's not this competition. There's not this kind of stressful, frictional interaction, because the grandfather doesn't have the same emotions toward the child that the father does. So the grandparent is, first of all, freer to work with the son. A. B. Pick up another thread that Shira brought up, is that he has the wisdom and the experience. Who is the grandfather? The grandfather is generally the wisest man in the family because he's lived life. Assuming that he's been, a really intelligent person, he's had success and has the best perspective. So if he's sharing these ideas, it gives it the gravitas of experience and wisdom. So basically, not only do you have to bring in the parent to do the teaching, the wise men of the particular family, i.e. the grandfather, got to participate as well. Now, what's up with the idea of the Mount Sinai? So at Mount Sinai, Moshe says to the Jewish people, you shall make them known to your children, your children's children. At the Lord, to fear me all the days that you live on the earth. My question to you is, what was the Jews' reaction after they finished hearing the 10 Commandments?
You don't mean like back to golden calf? You mean more immediately after?
No, literally immediately when he finished.
Na'aseh v'nishma.
No, that was the next day.
That was the next day.
Next day, yeah.
Thanks.
You'll refresh our memories.
Well, I think the people were very scared. They couldn't face it. They wanted Moses to go up himself.
Exactly. Very good, Gilad.
Thank you.
Wait, what?
They were petrified, and they told Moshe
Nice.
to you go speak to him.
Oh, that was a nevuah for everybody?
Either was a nevuah or they had a miracle where they were able to hear the prophecy simulcast. No, they had either a direct apprehension or a miraculous simulcast.
I see. So it was either, okay. So they were totally freaked out, and they had Moshe intermediate for them.
Exactly. So here's the key thing. Because Hashem says to Moshe, he says to Moshe that you stay with me and everybody's going to go back into their tents. People want to go back into their tents. Why does everybody want to go back? What is the metaphor of going back into their tents?
Going back to the place where they feel comfortable because they couldn't deal with the discomfort. They were freaked out. They didn't know how to, they couldn't process it.
Yeah, 100%. In other words, the getting that level of comprehension about reality is
Too much.
too much. But it's like they need a break. I need to sit on my couch and have some chips and watch the game and a beer. Too much of this Torah stuff. It's enough already. I'm out. So what the grandfather can communicate from one generation to the other is that there's a fundamental tension. There's the fear of apprehending the advanced concepts, the abstract concepts of the reality of Hashem on one level. And another level is what? Going back into the tent. And he can share, and to your point, as both the experience and with the wisdom of many years, to share that with the child. So he has a rare vantage point, and he has access to the kid that nobody else has. He doesn't have the tension that the parent has. He's viewed as a kindly figure, typically the wise person in the family, and he has the benefit of that to be able to communicate the message of Sinai, of the fear of Hashem versus hiding out in the tent. All right. How is that clear? So therefore that gets to our personality number 2 of the Torah Masorah, which is first his parent, then his grandparent, and then we have what? We have then we got then we got the wise man.
Wise man, disciple.
So the wise man, the disciple. So what Gilad asked last week and what Mendel asked this week, what's going on here? And you should teach them to your sons, or you should teach them diligently to your sons, more sharply to your sons would be a better translation. The oral law says, your sons, these are your students, for your students are also called sons. It says, and the Bnei HaNeviim went forth. You need to know a little story here. And I'm going to hit the, I'm going to go 1 second. Okay. Are you guys familiar with the story of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, and his disciple Elisha?
No.
Okay, no worries. No worries. Okay. So it's an interesting story, but to give you a little context, in the book of Kings, the prophet of that time in the northern kingdom was Eliyahu, right? We all know him as being the famous prophet, okay? And was he successful or unsuccessful in turning the Jewish people around from idolatry?
Unsuccessful?
Unsuccessful is correct. And he was very frustrated. And he was angry at the people for being, you know, of not
Obstinate.
Yeah, and
Obdurate.
yeah, being difficult. So basically, he has to run for his life because the king of the northern kingdom, Achav, or what they call in English, Ahab, and his idolatrous wife, Jezebel, has basically put a warrant on for him. He's a fugitive. He's the enemy of the state, and he says, "Hashem, I'm out. I can't deal with it anymore." So Eliyahu connects him with a student named Elisha. Okay, there's a whole interesting story, and that's a study in its own right. So who becomes Eliyahu's top student? Elisha. All right, and apparently then they had a prophet school, just like there's a rabbinical school. At that time in history, there was prophet schools, and they call them the Bnei Nevi'im, the disciples or children of the prophets. Okay, so there's a whole thing here that Elisha is going to go up in heaven in a whirlwind. That's a whole interesting story, which serves a class in its own right. Okay. And then it said, let's pick it up from here. So Eliyahu is going to disappear. He's going to be, let's call it, out of service. God's going to take him, whatever that means. And Elisha is going to take over. And Eliyahu is trying to lose him. Let's pick it up from verse 6. Take it away. Gilad.
Okay. And Elijah said to him, "Stay here now, for the Lord has sent me to Jordan." And he said, "As the Lord lives by your life, I will not leave you." And they both went. And 50 men of the disciples of the prophets went and stood opposite them from a distance, and they both stood at the Jordan. And Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water, and it divided to this side and to that side, and they both crossed on dry land. And when they crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you while I am not taken away from you." And Elisha said,
"While I'm not yet taken away from you."
Oh, sorry. And Elisha said, "Please let there be a double portion of your spirit on me."
Right. So that's a kind of wisdom. So how much does he want? He wants double. Go on.
And he said, "You have made a difficult request. If you see me taken from you, it will be so to you, and if not, it will not be." And then it was that they were walking and talking, and behold, a fiery chariot and fiery horses, and they separated them both. And Elijah ascended to the heaven in a whirlwind. And Elisha saw, he was crying, my father, the chariot of Israel and their riders. And he saw him no longer. Now he took hold of his garments and rent them in two pieces. And he picked up Elijah's mantle that had fallen off him, and he returned and stood at the bank of the Jordan. And he took Elijah's mantle that had fallen off him, and he struck the water and said, "Where is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" And he too struck the water, and it divided on this side and on that side, and Elisha crossed. And the disciples of the prophets who were in Jericho saw him from a distance, and they said, "Elijah's spirit has rested on Elisha." And they came toward him and prostrated themselves before him to the ground. And they said to him,
So what essentially, there's a lot going on here, and it's a whole interesting class, but let's just say, what happened?
Eliyahu passed away.
Eliyahu passed away, but before he passed away, he said to Elisha, "What do you want?" And he says, "I want double the ruach, double the spirit." And what Eliyahu said something very interesting.
The difficult quest.
Yeah, but he said something. He says if he said this is the key thing.
Right. Eliyahu says if he goes, then you'll get it. If not, then you won't.
No. Read it carefully.
Oh, if you see me taken from you?
Yes.
In other words, if you have the vision, if you have that sort of spiritual vision, then you'll see me. Then you'll have it.
Exactly. In other words, the Eliyahu disappearing was a prophetic experience. So, because you see suddenly this that there's a fiery chariot and these fiery horses, and it suddenly picks him up, and Eliyahu disappears. Okay. And then it's interesting. What does Elisha say to him? He was crying, and I'm going to read the Hebrew. He says, "Avi, Avi, my father, Rechav Yisrael ufarashav, the chariot of Israel and their riders." And he never saw him again. And then he tore Kriya for him. He tore. Now, was Eliyahu Hanavi Elisha's biological father?
Right, so that's the part that I was focusing on. I got lost the rest of the story, but I was looking at the my father piece. So that here is an example of a disciple looking at his teacher as being a parent. So we see that paradigm being created.
Yes. I wouldn't say it's created here. It's really being maximally manifest.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? In other words, that even though that Elisha had wonderful parents, when he became in part of Eliyahu's school, if you will, part of the Bnei Nevi'im, and he was not any student, he was the top student, right? When Eliyahu went away, he says, "Avi, Avi, my father." He's saying it's the chariots of Israel and the riders. So what is he really? It's interesting. It's it's a personal reflection. It's a personal loss that his dad is leaving him. And then he's talking about the chariots of Israel and the riders. He sees, what does he see Eliyahu as? What's a chariot of Israel? What is a chariot?
The king, maybe?
A fighter.
Right.
It's a carrier.
Right. It's the carrier. It's the vehicle of carrying of Israel. In other words, you view Eliyahu and his leadership as fundamentally being what? Carrying the entire Jewish people. So, and then he takes. That's why he takes Eliyahu's jacket that fell off him, and he strikes the water, and apparently it automatically split.
No.
So then he does it. He says, "Where is the God of Elijah?"
He doesn't call in the name of his own power. He calls in the name of his teacher.
In other words, he's saying that. In other words, you see that he's not automatically the replacement figure, but rather he's perceiving God as being as the being as articulated by Elijah, Eliyahu, and then
Similar.
Now, what is the interesting thing about splitting of a body of water?
It's reminiscent of what Moses did.
Exactly. It's reference. It seems to be referencing that back. And then, just to get to the point here, the disciples of the prophets who were in Jericho saw him from a distance, and they said, Elijah's spirit had rested on Elisha. In other words, they knew and they bowed toward him. Why? What happened? What happened in a political sense?
He became.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
He assumed the position that Eliyahu vacated.
Exactly. And they knew that he had become the
Godfather.
Well, the top Navi.
So to speak.
Top prophet.
The leader of the school, the head educator.
Exactly. So
the Rabbi Penny of.
Yeah, I don't think that's a perfect analogy on that one there, Gilad. So the point of the matter is, but now do you notice that a person's teacher or his prime Torah teacher, in this case the ultimate example the Rebbe Talmud, the teacher-student relationship of Elijah, Eliyahu, and Elisha is being the Rambam referenced that here because really, it is a father. It is a father-child sense. In what sense is a father-child experience?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Why would you call? Why did Elisha call Eliyahu my father? My father.
Imparting knowledge, teaching the ways, the values to live by.
Because he actually had an accurate conception of a father-son relationship. I mean, a father-son relationship is about teaching, right?
Well, so you can say. What you're saying is correct, but to put it more bluntly, a person goes on through. There's two creations a person experiences. There's a biological creation, which mom and dad are responsible for, right? And then there's the creation of mind. And you can have one person, your top teacher, in this case, Eliyahu, who literally created Elisha from the inside out.
It's like two kind of creation.
It's a double, and therefore he was, in a certain sense. And what's more unique to the person, his physical body or his soul? So basically, his parents caused the soul to come into being, but his father, but Eliyahu actualized it, brought it into reality. So therefore, in a real sense, Eliyahu was more of a father than Elisha's real biological father. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, Vishinat you teach diligently to your son in a comprehensive way refers to that Chacham who teaches the students the Torah, because he's really he's not just poetically a father. In a substantive way, he truly is a father creator, because it really is a creating of a creating of a mind is really the person. You know what I mean? Taking from a raw state of potentiality to actuality. So that's why the Rambam chooses. There are many examples in the Tanakh where students and disciples are used. But he specifically goes to that experience of the transferring of the baton, and the sons of the prophets went forth to bring clear our third personality of the passing on of the Torah, which is the wise man, which in the ultimate extreme case is Eliyahu to Elisha, who brought Elisha into being. You know what I'm saying?
Where are these halachos? I'm sorry. Where are these halachos from? Is this
the laws of Talmud Torah? It's the laws of Talmud Torah, the law of Torah.
Okay.
The first chapter. I didn't put it in, unfortunately.
Okay. No, it's all right. I just didn't know.
All right. So I want to give a 1 minute recap. So we have three levels. We have three levels of educator, or not three levels, or three different kinds of educators. One is the dad, which got the basic responsibility. Now, a father could be all three of these, by the way, okay? Or at least two of them. The second thing is the grandfather has a unique role to use his wisdom and experience to, without the emotional challenges of dealing with your own child, can provide bring the message of Sinai, of the having awe of God's wisdom versus the pursuit of living in the tent, living in the OL, which is and sharing life lessons and how to get there. Okay, that's the grandfather. Then we have the Chacham, a kind of father, right? That's what you learn from Eliyahu and Elisha, who teaches them Shinun Levnecha is an abstract presentation of the material, more, let's call it a graduate school level presentation of the material versus a elementary school education presentation of the father. That's why, using the other metaphor, the first paragraph is the total fan, and that's the Chacham who loves it, wants to talk about it all the time, and wants to share with anybody who will listen. And then there's the partial fan who wants to discharge their basic responsibility and duty. You know what I mean? They love Torah, but they love other stuff as well. And that's the paragraph 2 Shema. The second paragraph Shema, well, that's pointing to reward and punishment and the journey of growth that a Jew goes through. So that's those are the three personalities of the Torah community, and its growth and then in bringing the child into the discipline, the field of study called Torah. Okay, and each one has a unique role, and they can't be, in a certain sense, duplicated by the other guy so readily. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to share today. So, is that clear?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Question: Are these things halachot or mitzvot? Are they commandments?
It's there's one mitzvah of learning Torah.
Okay.
And these are halachot within the one mitzvah.
I see. So that means that a smart, like a very chacham person, he's obligated to teach others.
Yes.
So if somebody is a very, say like a wise, good student from yeshiva, he has an obligation. So how does he do it? Short of founding an MGE or something like that, how do you do it?
Well, how you balance your own learning versus teaching others is not a clear thing, because in order to teach, you must learn. You know what I mean? You wouldn't want to be seen for a medical exam by a first year medical student. You know what I'm saying? So
okay.
So you want it. So at what point the person is ready for to go on the road and to teach, and how much has to be a balance. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
To teach, you got to prepare, so you can't spend all your time teaching because you got no real material.
Right.
And you got to be developed enough to be able to communicate that properly.
Speak less often. Can I ask you one more question, Rabbi?
Yeah, good.
If the Torah was describing Martin Luther King, his civil rights motivations and all that, would the Torah say that God spoke to him and that's why he said those things? Or because did God really speak to Moses, or did Moses simply do it for his own psychological reasons? If I was from the royal house of Pharaoh and my people were suffering, I would have psychological and personal motivations to free the people, not because God told me.
Well, at that point, nobody told Moshe to do it. So, it's similar to Martin Luther King. His going out to the people was a function of his love of justice.
But I mean, when he finally decided to ask Pharaoh for their freedom, did God really speak to him, or did he simply do it in the same sense as Martin Luther King did it because of personal motivations?
No, in fact, the Torah goes on very clearly that basically Moshe begs God to take somebody else.
But that's kind of like begging when you take on a big mission for yourself. You sort of have these, heartfelt conversations with yourself, saying, "Am I good enough? Can I do it?" So when they say God, is it really just like your own mind, your own soul?
Right. No, so the Torah tries to make it clear, again, assuming that this is a divine document, not a human document. They're conveying that basically, ironically, that Moshe did not want the job and wanted to, in fact, many times says, "I'm not the man for the mission." It wasn't personal; only personal was given. And not only that, the Torah says that the Jews trusted Moshe, which means that beforehand that they were unsure: is his motivation purely divine, or is he has his own psychological agenda that he's trying to use his leverage to manipulate us? You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't until Sinai, when they were involved in experiencing the revelation together with Moshe, not necessarily on the same level, that they felt the conviction that he in fact was sharing the divine word and not using his position to weasel them. You know what I'm saying? That's a major theme in the book of Shemot. Moshe not wanting not only that, he felt that they were not, once he was ratted out by the other Jews and he had to flee and live on the run for 50 years, he felt the Jews were not worthy of being redeemed. And that's the image of the burning bush. He felt that they should really be consumed by fire, and he's not sure why the angel of God is sort of preventing it from being consumed. He doesn't understand that. It's paradoxical for him. The thing that Jews are not, they've fallen to an abyss of corruption. That the one guy who's willing to help them out, they within a day and a half, he's ratted out to the authorities. And therefore, Moshe has spent over 50 years on the run to avoid the long arm of the law of the Egyptian military complex. You know what I mean? So
I see what you're saying. I just started wondering recently whether, when the Torah says person A did X, Y, Z because of God, whether another way of saying it is the person was self-motivated and did it, and whether maybe a more like, I don't want to say primitive people, but would simply say God motivated you as opposed to you did it because you're motivated.
What would be the difference in Torah if the Torah said, well, person X did something or other, as opposed to God, the person did something because God told him to?
Well, I guess if it's God, then it's coming from the divine source. If it's the same way that Martin Luther King did it, then it's I don't know if it's divinely inspired. It's inspired by his own, psyche, his own personality.
Right. So that's the key point. I mean, there is clearly in the early part of Moshe's career, when he's, there are two episodes where he steps in to implement justice. So that's basically a function of his own internal sense of right and wrong, his own conviction of what justice is.
Okay, I see.
So that's really he's a man of conviction.
Okay.
And I would, let's give Martin Luther King the benefit of the doubt. He also worked as a function of the conviction. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He saw there should be an opportunity to provide justice to the African American community of the United States, and he stepped into the breach, and in a certain sense, ultimately lost his life for that. In the early years of Moshe, he was also acting as a function of conviction. But then, of course, there's clearly the Torah saying that there was a communication between God and Moshe. And even with that, here's the key point. You would imagine if God told you to do something, you'd say, of course I'm going to do it. But clearly, Moshe gives like 4 arguments why you should not do the job. Which seems to be rather rude and chutzpahdik, for lack of a better word, that he's blowing off God, but he felt that it just simply irrational that he should be sent. He couldn't see it. The Midrash, and this is probably an exaggeration, but says that they were arguing for a week. He didn't want the job. He felt he was not the man for the job. It didn't make sense for him to do the job. The shlichut, the mission, seemed a preposterous mission, and that was really a major part of that episode. And then when he has his first setback, he's also having tremendous misgivings because he says to God, ever since I've come there, I just made the situation worse. So the first part of his shlichut is mired with self doubt and.
Rabbi, thank you so much for explaining the different levels. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. To begin, all right. So next Tuesday, well, let me ask you this question: if I have class online, will you guys come at 8:15? I
will.
Next Tuesday. I will.
It's New Year's. It's what they call in the American vernacular New Year's Eve. Some people even have plans.
I will.
I do not have plans.
Okay.
I don't either.
All right, so fine. So I will email you, but presumably we'll be on.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Nice meeting you. What's his name?
Mendel.
Mendel. Nice meeting you, Mendel.
See ya.